Today we're going to take this Marshall Class 5 that I got used from Guitar Center, and I have some mods here that I would like to perform on it. I got a Fromel Mod kit to upgrade the circuitry. Resistors, capacitors, came with a choke. We're going to add a choke to this amp. I'm going to swap the new tubes in it, some Mullards, a couple 12 AX7s and an EL84. And then I have a new 10-inch creamback from Celestion. And we're going to turn this amp hopefully into a 5-watt fire breather. So let's get started. Let's pick a weapon. I think it's only appropriate for the gold and white that we pick the Gibson Flying V there. Have the Flying V of Doom in hand. Okay, so currently I have it set how I like it, but let me set everything except volume at noon. So here's noon settings, volume around 9 o'clock. It's close enough in tune. All right, let's roll it up a bit. It'll start to break up. It's about 10:30. Let's do noon on volume, and it'll be pretty broken up now. So that's all kind of noonish on the amp. To me, it's a little too woofy in the bass, and you probably can't. It's probably not coming through very clearly on the recording. But I hear some rattling or some cabinet vibration. I don't know which it is. So part of that's the bass and how it's accepting it. So I'm going to put it to the settings I like currently with this amp, which is mids dimed, treb dimed, and bass about 9 o'clock, and volume about 11-ish. It sounds okay. It's loud. It's a really loud amp, but it's not a super inspiring sound. So I'm hoping that the Fromel Mod, and I'll read to you what the Fromel Mod's going to do and what all the things we're going to do. The new tubes, and I got all Mullards for it. It's an EL84 power section with 12 AX7s in the preamps. And then I got a 10-inch creamback for it. So pretty high-end mods for this bad boy. So I can't wait to hear what it sounds like when all those things are done and she's fixed up. This mod should take a couple hours, and I'm going to run you through it now. So let's get rolling. Let's just go through the mods real quick. Okay, so Marshall Class 5, covered that. Here's the new tubes, two 12 AX7s, one EL84 in the power. Here's the Fromel Mod kit, bunch of resistors and capacitors. The instructions are there, and we'll pull those up to go through those. Here's also the choke that was included with this modification kit. And then here's the Celestion 10-inch creamback. It's rated at 45 watts. It's probably going to give this amp some more headroom. All right, I'm on the Fromel website. Sounds like it's 18 steps with moderate difficulty. Should take about 2 hours. All right, let's go through some of the tools I think you're gonna need to get this completed. You're obviously gonna need a soldering iron. Preferably, if you're gonna buy one of these, get one with a temperature adjustment. You don't wanna overheat the circuit board. That's really critical. I recommend one of these Wellers. This is not super expensive soldering iron. You can get it at Amazon or wherever. This just cleans the solder off the iron. Easily purchased wherever. Here's the desoldering wick. Here's the resin, the actual solder. This one has lead in it, which means it's super awesome. You're gonna need a multimeter. I forgot to mention that. We're gonna have to check to make sure the filter caps are discharged before we start taking it apart. Gonna need some screwdrivers. Gonna need some cutters to cut out the components. And then optionally, you could have a Marshall amplification hat, you know, just because. All right, I'll run you through the 18 steps. And if this is something you want to tackle from Fromel to your class 5, John offers these kits at his website, somewhere between $129 and $200. Okay, step 1 talks about performing this act will essentially void the warranty. Yeah, I would think so. You're modifying it from stock. Obviously, we're gonna have to discharge the caps. I'm sure that's probably step 2 or 3. And then it talks about the PCB board, separate 2 PCBs. We'll get into that. We'll see what version it is and see how fragile the amp is. So. All right, step 2, unplug the amp. We've done that. Place on a level surface. We've done that. Remove the 4 screws holding the chassis to the cabinet. Remove the chassis and place it in a well-lit area. All right, let's do that. All right, since this is the combo version, it's a little more complicated to take apart. Let me spin it around because there's a bunch of screws in the back I'm gonna have to take off. I'm assuming these 4 are holding it in, but this back panel also looks like it's holding it in. So hopefully this comes off easy. I have a feeling it's not going to. I won't bore you with this detail, but I'll get this panel off and then we'll start from there. All right. When I laid it down, the back panel came right off. I exposed the head. Here's what it looks like. This should be able to come out easy now. I think I'm going to take this panel off as well because I can't really get the tubes out. I don't know if you can see them in there. All right, got the screws out. Yeah, that plate came right off. Oh, that's interesting. So there's some grommets around the tubes to hold them in place. That's nice. So I was hearing some rattle. It might be one of the tubes, but might just be the enclosure that can't handle the low end of the amp. Hopefully that's not the case. All right, let's see if I can get this out. I can, once I get the speaker disconnected. Put this generally back so I can disconnect the speaker. All right, sorry, just taking this little assembly doodad off. All right, should come out now. There we go. Move this out of the way for the time being. We don't need it until we swap the speaker. So there's a look inside the cabinet without the head. We're gonna swap out that little Marshall 15-watt speaker. It is a Celestion, but I don't think it sounds all that great. I think it's kind of cheap. And then here's the head, resting nicely on the transformer. All right, here's the circuit board we're gonna modify. So let's go to step 3, which I'm sure is gonna discharge the filter caps. Okay, step 3, we need to drain the filter caps. So the amp is off. We've exposed the tube sockets. So I have been wrestling with this rubber grommet for 15 minutes now. EL84. It's still stuck here. I'm going to have to use an X-Acto knife, but it really tells me this amp's biased way too hot. This tube's been running way too hot in here. So I know part of the fix is to cool the biasing of this amp, so that'll help. So if this happens to you, just I'm using a little bit of soap is partly how I got this loose, but now I'm going to have to use an X-Acto knife to cut it loose. Now we need to check to see if the caps are discharged just by turning it off, which is the pin 1 of V1, so the first valve. And we'll do that with our multimeter, and we need to set it to DC voltage, and it has to measure less than 15 volts. So let's test that now. Okay, so hopefully you can read the multimeter. Set it to DC voltage. We're going to test the valve 1 with pin 1. Pin 1 is here. It's measuring at 16 volts, which is a little greater than 15. We'll discharge it just to be safe. You can see it's dropping. Okay, so I've just been discharging it, just grounding the chassis, and now I'm below 9 volts, so it's as harmless as a 9-volt battery. It's well below 15 volts. I think we're safe. So. All right. Who am I to follow instructions in order? Remove the tube PCB prep, which is the tube chassis. We removed that, which holds the tubes in place. So we already did step 4. So now step 5, we need to output jacks PCB removal, access tube PCB. We need to remove the 2 red and 1 black speaker and headphone jack nuts. Gently push in and lift out the jack PCB. With the jack's PCB pushed out of the way, gently push the tube PCB up. All right, let's give that a go. All right, need another tool, socket set. You can use a crescent wrench or whatever. This is 15 millimeters. These hopefully should come out. Don't want to give them too much force. They're plastic, I think. So, you know, they're almost these are almost hand loose. Yeah, these things are cheap. I don't know, it sure feels like I need to remove these screws. You're supposed to pull this up, but it's definitely secured and snug in here. I have a feeling it's held in by these 2 things as well, so I'm going to have to remove those 2. Loosen those 2 up. Now, yep, now it wants to come out. So I had to take out all that crap, which is different than the head, unfortunately. All those screws had to come out. So now, yep, now it wants to come free. Very good. Be kind of careful. It's all tied together. But now we have access to both these boards. I can disconnect all that. But let's follow the instructions. Let's don't get ahead of ourselves. Step 6, looking at the tube socket side of the board, clip the wire 3 connector to the right on connector con 103B. Be sure to clip it as flush to the connector as you can. Remove the solder from pins 6 and 9 on V3. Strip the tin at the end of the wire. Clip from con 103B. Solder the wire one end on the 100 ohm 1 watt resistor to pin 6 and the other lead to pin 9. Leave about an 1/8 inch clearance above the PCB. Okay, I think I get this. I think the trick here is that wire to 103B. I'll show you what 103B is. This is hard to see, but here's the tube socket board. It's the second one here. I know it's really hard to see. I'm trying to get to focus. That says 103B, if you can believe me. So I'm looking at the front side of it with the sockets. It says to cut the third wire from the back side of the board, okay? So when you stare at the back side of the board, third wire on the right is the one we're gonna cut. Okay, so now you're staring at the back side of the board here. 1, 2, here's the third wire. I'm gonna leave a little more slack than what he was saying just in case I'm really screwing something up, so. All right, no going back now. I cut the third wire on the right. So I'll probably cover that wire up just so it's not exposed. But this is the one I gotta strip back. And this is gonna get connected with pin 6 and pin 9 with that resistor. All right, so I had to cheat. I checked all these resistors so I knew which is which. I can't tell by the color coding. And the good news is all the parts check out. So yeah, so I cheated. But it's important to get the parts in the right spot. I spent about an hour doing that, by the way. Okay, I realize this isn't really part of the video, but I figure it'd be good to show this just to show you how I did find out the values of these. So this is a resistor. It doesn't matter, positive, negative, doesn't matter for a resistor, unlike a capacitor, which has positive and negative sides. All you need to do is hook it up, positive, negative. We're gonna go to ohms here. This is a 2.7K, so the 20 should read, there you go. So I have it on 20K ohms. It's reading at 2.67 ohms. There's the connection, so it's a 2.7K ohm resistor. Okay, that wasn't a ton of fun, I'm not gonna lie. So I was able to get it. There's the disconnect from 103B into pin 6, and then the resistor from 6 to 9. That was not easy to thread through, and you can see I left this, I'm about to snip it off. Here's the remains of that resistor that I'm gonna have to cut off. And then if you look here, it's the traces of the wire and the resistor on pin 6. That was not easy to feather through, so just wanted to show you that. I'm not gonna show every solder element, but I am gonna explain kind of the process that I'm going through here. Step 7, remove R25 and replace 10K half watt resistor. All right, we can do that. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know. I just showed you all this put back together. But step 7 is resistor 25 is getting replaced on the PCB board. So that was a misstep in the instructions. So we're taking out 25. Got the new resistor in place. Bent the leads. Now it's just time to clean them. Add some fresh solder. Get it flowing. Easier said than done, as usual. Doesn't help that your eyesight's going bad. All right. Yuck, that's a little sloppy. All right. That looks pretty good. R25 is in place. Let's just trim these leads. We're up to step 8, remove the main PCB. Disconnect W1, 2, 3, and 4. Use a low-tack tape and a Sharpie, more tools, to mark their location so you can put it in the right place. Remove the knobs, nuts, washers from the pots. Remove the nut and isolation washer from the input jack. There's a second isolation washer on the other side of the jack. It does not need to be removed, but don't lose it. Okay, fair enough. Remove the screws from either corner of the PCB blah, blah, blah. The main PCB should be loose now, holding only the sides of the PCB. And with the output PCB up and out of the way, push it towards the back of the chassis until the pots will clear. All right, so it's really just be careful. I did notice that this particular model does have all the pots attached to the board, which is a bummer. So those are all kind of weak joints. I may touch up solder on those just to make sure they stay strong. I haven't noticed any issues with it, but I think it would be good practice. Got that out. Now I'm removing the input washer. All right. Here's like we are in some business now. These are some tiny pots. I wish they used higher quality parts for this particular part of the board, but they did not. They did some cost savings. All right, we now have access to the board. So we have all the wiring of the transformer. It's not the easiest thing to get to, but I can get to it. Why is this wired through the board? It makes it really hard to access the board. All right, step 8 is complete. Step 9, grid leak in V1 Cathode Mod. Remove R20, R18, and C8. Install 1 meg resistor and R20, 2.7K resistor and R18, and 1 microfarad cap and C8. All right, let's go. Okay, all the parts we're after are right here. R20, R18, this is C8. I'll move it out of the way. See that? C8, there they are. Beauty. Let's take them all out. All right, got the new components in. Here's the new C8. Here's the new R20. Here's the new R18. Again, pay close attention to positive and negatives on the capacitors. The long lead line, connection is usually the positive. Plus, if you look at the capacitor on one side, it kind of gives you this blackened edge with the dashes indicating negative. You guys can see my solder work. There it is. Okay, step 10, bright cap. Install 100 picofarad cap in the mid pins 2 and 3 of the volume pot. All right, that doesn't look like any fun. Look at that small little thing I'm about to insert in there. Little capacitor. All right, that was a huge pain in the butt, but it generally looks like the picture. But I got it on the 2 and 3 pins there. Okay, so I just learned something. I was worried about the polarity because this is a capacitor, but because it's a ceramic, unlike the film capacitors, the polarity doesn't matter. So, good to know. Okay, step 11, preamp gain for tone stack. Remove R7, R9, and C13. Install 470K half-watt resistor in R7 using a lead clipped off of a part you used to jumper where C13 used to be. So single resistor, removing a capacitor and 2 resistors, and we're jumpering C13 now, okay? So I do have a long lead. I will show that once I get there. Okay, so over here on this side of the board, there's R7, R9, which is right next to R7. And then if you come up here is C13. So I'll get those removed. I'll show you the replacement bits and we'll move on to the next step. Okay, so there's just the wire jumper on C13 as requested. There's the removal of R9 and the inclusion of the new resistor on R7, which is a 470K half-watt resistor. So jumper based off an old lead, looks like this, right? I just snipped it and just put it in there. Slow and steady wins the race. Step 12, coupling cap and tone stack mod. We're going to remove R28, C14, C20, and C21. We're going to install a 56K resistor at R28. We're going to install one of those really cool looking Mallories, which I'll show you in actually both Mallories. We got two of them in C20 and C21. Those must be the sweetener on the tone stack. That's probably going to do the heavy lifting. And then install a 270 picofarad capacitor in C14. All right. Okay, so R28's here. C20 is here. C21 is here, and C14 is there. Let me get in close. See those? And then R28's over here. That's what we're taking out. Okay. New resistor, R28, new capacitor at C20, new capacitor that doesn't fit very well into this slot at C21, and then new capacitor at C14. Show you a side angle. See how small, how much bigger this capacitor is than the previous one, so I had to do a weird angly thing, but it works, similar to his photo. So I think we got there. All right, now we're getting fancy. Treble peaker. Remove R14, twist the 470 picofarad leads around the 470K resistor as shown in the picture and solder. Clip the hanging leads off and install in R14. Okay, hopefully this will look clean. Aw, ain't that cute? It kind of looks like the photo. I did an okay job, I thought. All right, let's go find R14. R14 is right here. Step 14, we're making our way down. V2B plate load. Remove R13, install 150K and R13. All right, let's do that. You can see where it's located on the board there. Let's go find it on the real one. All right, found it. It's down there, R13. Okay, new R13, right there. Next step. Remember that whole tube issue we had where the rubber grommet thing was sticking to the tube? Well, hopefully this is going to rectify that. Step 15. Cooling bias. Remove R27 and replace with 220 ohm 3 watt resistor. Make sure the resistor is mounted a ½ inch off the PCB and it isn't touching any of the nearby components. Okay, let's make sure that happens. And then let's check it again when we put it back together. All right, here's R27. It's kind of buried in there and all these wires. Got to be a bit careful. I may have to remove those wires while I do this. All right, got it in there. Approximately a ½ inch off. Nothing's touching it. I did end up removing these cables just to be safe. Probably didn't have to, but it was hard to maneuver. One's a 3-pin, one's a 4-pin, so it's pretty easy to remember how it went back together. Next step. Step 16, filter caps. Here we are. Remove C3, C4, C11. The 22 microfarad 400 volt cap in 11 and 3. And then the 100 microfarad 400 volt cap in C4. All right. We're going to take out C11, C3, and C4. This is C12. In case you were interested. See, C3, hard to see in there, but that says C4, C3, C11. I had to remove the little gluey bits. Okay, new C3, C4, C11. Okay, on step 17, adding a choke. Carefully mark and drill 3 16-inch holes for mounting the choke next to the inlet grommet for the power transformer. Use an automatic center punch to mark the holes is a great way to keep your drill bit from walking. I have a punch, so I can do that. Careful not to drill into the PCB. That makes sense. Mount the choke using the supplied 1/2-inch 8x32 thread bolt and Kep's nuts. Problem. I was not supplied with the bolts or nuts, so I'm gonna have to go to the hardware store and get those. Once I have those and have it mounted, then I'm going to remove R5 and install the choke leads where R5 was. He likes to twist the choke leads and run them under the PCB, inserting the leads from the bottom of the PCB and soldering there as well. Okay, well, I got to make a run to the hardware store. Hopefully you can see that R5 is tucked in there, right here. And that's the one we're going to connect the choke to. So I just got to remove that resistor and connect it to both ends. So there are the 2 holes I drilled to mount the choke. All right, there's the wiring to R5 through the power transformer hole. There's the 2 bolts on the backside. All right, step 18, put it back together. So I got plenty of connections to attach. Speaker, cable. Still need to swap the speaker, new tubes, yada yada. Okay, after all that hard work, all that's left to do is, proof is in the pudding, right? That's what they say. Let's turn it on. Hopefully she powers on cleanly, for starters. Have everything set at noon. Trusty V. No power because I didn't plug it in. That was anticlimactic. All right, plugged in. Well, powered on. That's a good sign. See if we get any noise out. There she is. She's alive. Yeah, way more headroom. It's way more open, more usable EQ section. Tuning's optional. Let's roll up the volume. Here it is at noon. Oh, hell yeah. That's 3 o'clock. All right, dudes, there you have it. Marshall Class 5, Fromel modded. Little bits of parting information and things that maybe I didn't cover real well. Let's go over items that are needed to complete this besides all the tools. Hopefully you have all that if you're going to do this. This Class 5 I got used at Guitar Center for 400 bucks. I think new these amps went for like 350, 400 bucks, so they're still holding their value. It is a British made amp, believe it or not. This particular model was made in 2011. The speaker I put in it was a creamback that I got from Reverb, and that was $112.50. It's a 10-inch, 16 ohm, that's the key. So if you are gonna modify the speaker in this, 16 ohm. The particular mod I got from Fromel was called the Marshall Class 5 Z Mod Supreme. And that was $199.95. And the key takeaway that I've gotten from that, obviously there was a lot of tone changing, it cooled the bias, but I think that choke worked wonders on the high end, because to me, it's the EQ section sits beautifully now out of this amp. I had it completely dimed, and it sounded very musical through all the volume range. So, yeah, that was a big eye-opening experience. I'm also curious how much the new tubes and the speaker had impacts of change. Unfortunately, I didn't swap in the speaker to just show you what that change would sound like, or the tubes, but I think you get the idea. There would be marginal improvements from either or both that would help the amp as well. And then finally, it was the new tubes I put in here. I got from Tube Depot. They were Mullards. They were not cheap. They were $99.85. So they were 100 bucks for 3 tubes. Now I did get low noise and low microphonics, and really essentially no microphonics from the 12AX7s. You can order that special, And the good news is I didn't have to match tubes since I only had a single EL84 to put in here. So yeah, so in total, this whole amp modification amp project was $811.30. So not cheap by any means, but no doubt about it, it's the best 5-watt amp I've ever heard now. And I'm glad to own it, and I could gig with it, and I could mic it up. It would sound great. It sounds great in the room, even cranked. It's not ear deafening. It just does the thing. It does that Marshall thing so beautifully. Some other key takeaways. So I made my little list here. Sorry, I added notes to it, but I made my little list of all the resistors and capacitors and stuff. That was critical to figuring out this build and making sure it went smoothly. If I didn't do that, I would have been lost. So that was a good hour spent. Definitely take your time. Be careful with the PCBs if you do this. You can burn those tracers pretty easy, and those things would come off if you heat the board too much. That's really critical with having the proper soldering iron that doesn't get too hot. Pin the iron right to the board and heat up the board. So yeah, all in all, it was a 2-hour build. I would have said it took me close to 7, 8, somewhere in there. I was not in a hurry. Obviously I spent an hour making the chart. I had to go get bolts. So a trip to Home Depot was in order. A trip to Home Depot is usually in order for just about anything I do. The instructions were easy to follow. They were clear, they were concise. John did a great job just telling you how to do this. Again, I'm pretty novice at this. I don't know much more than what I've been told on the sheet. So yeah, all in all, super successful. Glad I did the project. Glad I wasn't in a hurry to get it done. And highly recommend it to any of you that want to try it. I do have in the background here a Fender Princeton reverb that I bought, a very similar Fromel kit. I haven't even begun to think about starting on that project, but when I do, please look out for the video of that. Super excited to get that thing, especially to have new caps in that one, just to make it true and clean, because the caps that come in those Fenders I know are hot garbage. So having new caps in that, knowing that they're good and safe, will go a long ways to keeping that amp pristine. So thanks for watching, guys. Love one another. Please like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks much. We'll see you. Take care.